I'm Steve Carter. In this video, I'm going to be talking about how I organized my most recent recording project, and I hope you'll find some tips in this video that will help you to organize your recording project. This project was for 2 CDs that I call Music to Cook By and Music to Dine By. The music was inspired by my wife's cookbook, No Fret Cooking. She was writing a cookbook and asked me to write some music that could be recorded and included with the cookbook on CDs. The cookbook was published by Infinity Press in June of 2012, and the CDs are included in the back of the cookbook. I've also made the CDs available separately on CD Baby. So I'm going to talk about how I got from conception to that final point. My wife gave me a list of recipes that would be included in the cookbook, and I composed music to suit the recipes. So, for example, there was beer battered fish, and I wrote a song called Beer Battered. There was a recipe for peppers that are roasted in the oven, so I wrote a song called Pepper Poppers. She had a recipe for eggplant parmesan that was very light, so I wrote a song called A Lighter Shade of Parm. She had a recipe for Madagascar stew. So we'll take a look at how I composed and arranged and recorded those pieces. I made a folder in this outliner. This is called TreePad. It's just an outlining program. I made a folder and listed all of the 22 songs that I was going to compose, arrange, and record. And I didn't put them in any particular order. I just numbered them 1 to 22 because I wanted 2 CDs with 11 on each. I wanted to make sure I had them all listed. And I kept track of the progress partially by the color of the folder icon. It started as blue, and once I started working on the particular song, I changed it to red to indicate that it was in progress, and when it was done, turned it to green. And for each song, I kept track of the progress I've made in composing, arranging, recording, and mixing. As I went through this project, I changed slightly the way I organized things. I got more organized as I went along, and actually ended up using more software to do the job, but it went very smoothly. For example, when I was composing, I use Notion software, so I have a link here that launches Notion software and opens up to the score for this song, Beer Battered. Now, Notion allows me to notate everything and then play it back or export to an audio file. It has a built-in mixer so that I can solo, for example, just the drum set, and then say export audio, and it will create a WAV file of just drums. And then I can go back in and unsolo that and solo something else. So I can get any track or any combination of tracks combined. Once I have them exported, I bring them into my digital audio workstation. I have a link here that launches that. So here's the song in the digital audio workstation. I use N-Track Studio, and there's the drums and the bass and the guitar and so forth. Now, some of the songs have a lot more instruments. For example, Madagascar Stew. I wanted this to sound like Madagascar music, so I went on the web and listened to some Madagascar music and decided to do something in 6/8 time with a lot of percussion. So when I composed and arranged this in Notion, I used about half a dozen percussion instruments, and you'll see I used bongos along with other percussion instruments, and then the regular drum set. The flute has the melody, the marimba is going to be playing accompaniment lines, and there's a bass line. So what Notion allowed me to do is to get the right balance among all the instruments and then solo, for example, just some of the percussion instruments, but not the bongo. So now I'm going to get just gong, ganza, cowbell, etc. as a percussion track, and when I export that, I'll have a WAV file that's called percussion. Then I can go into my recording software, and I have a track for percussion, a track for drums, a track for bongos. And what I do is I overdub the guitar part. So all of these instruments are the electric instruments, the samples that came out of Notion, and the guitar is the live overdub. On some tracks, I recorded the bass part myself. So, for example, on Comfort Food, it's a rock ballad, and I exported the electric bass from Notion and used it as a kind of click track while I overdubbed the bass part on my fretless Travis Bean bass. And then I just muted the electric bass and exported my Travis Bean. So this allowed me to play guitar and bass. On some of the tracks I had as many as 7 guitar parts and an electric bass part that I overdubbed. So I had to keep track of all of that, and by keeping notes in here I could see what I'd recorded and what was done and what was not done. When it came time to mix, I decided that I wanted to keep even a little bit closer track on how things were going. So I used another outliner called Shadow Plan, and I used it a little bit with the recording to keep track of which instruments I'd recorded. For example, on Beer Battered, I had recorded the melody and I'd recorded the bass on my Mosrite electric fretted bass. This program allows me to track my priority, target date, started, and finished, so I could see at a glance what was checked off, what was only 50% done, and so forth. And that really became helpful to me in mixing because I'm less experienced with mixing than I am with the actual composing and playing. So I just pasted in a list of all of the songs. Originally, of course, all of these would be unchecked and the progress would be 0, and there'd be a target date, no started, no finished. And so as I worked on mixing a song, I would set the date to whatever the starting date was, and set the progress so I could see what I needed to work on. And then when I did the mastering, I did the same thing. I just pasted in a list of the songs, and as I worked on each one, as I finished it, I would check it off. As you can see from the dates here, I did all of the mastering in one day, but at least it allowed me to see which songs had been done and which songs had not been done. Once I had everything recorded and mixed and masters for the individual song files, I needed to decide on the sequence of files, how they were going to appear on the albums. So once again, I went into a spreadsheet and I just pasted in the list of songs. And at first they were in no particular order. And for each song I noted the style, funk, Mexican, African, samba, whatever, and a tempo. And I included a color in the tempo so I could see the difference between medium, slow, medium, and fast. And I've used this on several of my albums when I'm laying out the sequence. I pick a color code for each song. So if it's a little bit funky, it's something in the yellow or mustard colored range. If it's fast, it's some kind of red or purple. I wanted the first CD to be mostly up-tempo and lively. That's the music to cook by. I wanted the second CD to be more mellow, more slow songs, and more light jazz and so forth. So I used the lighter colors there. And I picked this lighter shade of Palm, which is a kind of slow rock tune. And it has a feel that kind of bridges the gap between the up-tempo first CD and the slower second CD. And I end with Comfort Food, which is a slow, gentle rock ballad. So this allows me to structure the feel of each of the CDs. And once I had that done, I had to burn the masters, make sure they had CD text, and make sure everything was in the right order and so forth, and then send them off for duplication. Got the duplication done, sent them off to CD Baby, sent them off to the publisher to go with the cookbook, put them on my web page with a list of the songs and a link back to CD Baby where people can listen to individual samples. They can buy individual MP3s. They can buy the whole album as an MP3 or as a CD. So there it is. There's the project pretty much from start to finish. And I hope you found it interesting and hope you picked up some tips. If you have questions or comments, you can email me, scarter@frogstoryrecords.com.